Hello, everybody, and welcome. Today, I have a very special guest I'd like to introduce you to, Brad Emberhart. He is a tantric sex coach, a sacred intimate for men. He's the founder of the Gay Tantra podcast. And so, as we here on Ecstatic Self explore the intersection of spirituality, sexuality, identity, queerness, I felt like he would be an awesome voice to get to hear from. I know one of the things we've talked a lot about on this channel is the different schools of Tantra, and Neo-Tantra, and Classical Tantra, and how they intersect and do or don't. So I know Brad is going to have a lot of interesting perspectives on that. So Brad, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And it's a pleasure to get to connect today.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
So why don't we just start off, give you an opportunity just to introduce yourself to everyone, talk a little bit about your background, how you've came to do the work that you're doing, what's exciting you right now. Just fill us in.
Well, thank you. I'll start off by saying that this is the first time Kay and I have met, which is what is destined to make this a dynamic interview, because we decided that our initial introduction would be recorded. We're just meeting. I mean, I met Margot Anand at a panel on Tantra at the Hawaii Tantra Festival for the first time. I met her on a panel that I organized. So now I'm meeting Kay in a live interview. I like it. I think it'll be dynamic and interesting and hot, maybe even as hot as his YouTube video called How to Make Your Dick Your Best Friend that got 40,000 views so far. To say anything about me is I coach men, primarily men who have sex with men, and how to enjoy their dicks more and how to integrate their cock with their soul. That's probably what Kay and I have in common, actually, is that Kay is teaching people to integrate their soul and their body, and that's what I do. I just happen to do it quite physically. I consider myself a sacred intimate, which means that I make places where men can come and fully express themselves in ways that they may never have done before, including overtly sexually. I've been making films about transformational ecstatic sexuality, working with Hemeros TV now for 4 or 5 years. Jason Tantra and Ian Ellington and I were among the early pioneers to start creating innovative gay erotica that's not only super hot and makes people want to bust a nut, but also shows the wholeness of a person as well as the overtly sexual and even the raunchy. So I take a lot of joy in finding the merging of the sacred and the taboo, and a lot of that comes from my upbringing. My spirituality has always been a really integral part of my life, and I have the Southern Baptist to thank for that. I grew up in a really unusual, let's just say that my Southern Baptist story is not typical. I was in a really small town in North Carolina. Everywhere I went, I had a set of eyes on me, and that could sound scary. In my case, in a town of 2,000 people in the 1970s and 1980s, it was really a good thing. I could ride my bicycle anywhere I wanted. I could walk all over town, and I was safe, and not only safe, but I was watched over by caring and loving people. I did not come from a dogmatic church. They were quite loving and quite supportive. And even though they were concerned for me when I came out in my early 20s, they still were loving and supportive. So what that led to is the seeking of a spiritual path that could hold all of me. And I was lucky enough to stumble upon a spiritual path that could hold the slut that I am, as well as the priest. And I learned that Tantra ultimately is the merging of opposites, the marriage of opposites. And nothing could be more opposite in our culture than sexuality and religion. A lot of people are still seeking to merge sexuality and spirituality. I've gone a bit further to integrate sexuality and religion. Meaning it's okay to have a spiritual path. It's okay to have a religious path. And ultimately, I'm helping a lot of men find a place for their heart and their soul and their sex, that they can all coexist in one body. So those are the main things I'm excited about right now. And specifically, I'm excited about making films that portray authentic, overt sexuality in a context of love and connection, even among strangers.
Beautiful. I love that. I know it's something that I often say on this channel too, is that, especially if we're inviting gay men to reclaim their spirituality, reclaim their innate connection to soulfulness, then that's really only going to be accomplished in a tradition that is encompassing of sex and sexuality, that says you can bring that these things you enjoy doing are not only not shameful, but they can be a gateway to your highest self. They can be a gateway to your enlightenment. They can be a gateway to connection. And how to be truly holy, you have to wholly show up.
Yes. Well said.
I love your tenacity. I love your willingness to break taboo, to break societal strictures around propriety of what decent people do, what do spiritual people do, which, as you highlighted, is very much a part of the historical tantric tradition. That, historically speaking, tantric yogis would break societal taboos and learn to find peace, learn to find God there, go have sex in cremation grounds, go convert with demons, to go and carry around a begging bowl made out of a human skull. Like that, if you can find God in what is considered, a sacrilege, then God exists everywhere.
Again, well said. I couldn't say it better.
So tell me more about the hands-on work that you're doing. Now, one of the things in my own personal practice, I've been reticent to move into that sort of space because of societal taboos, because of what do people say, what do people think. So tell me about, for you, how have you come to this place of breaking through your internal shame about saying, fuck what other people think, I'm doing this because this feels like the most direct means of helping others, of building connection, of creating change. What has the journey been like for you?
Well, I have a lot to say about that. I mean, I'm really tempted to respond to you first and say, well, what were you afraid of, ruining your reputation, If I was afraid of ruining my reputation by having sex with my clients, then it's too late. If my reputation was already ruined, then there's nothing. I don't have a lot more to fear, I suppose. And if I could back up the tape a little bit and just start over and say that statement again, I think what I would say is I waited 9 years from the time that I first masturbated and shot a load until I actually shared that experience with another human being. For 9 years, I was my only sex partner. Fortunately, I had a lock on the door in the bedroom in the house I grew up in, and I would lock it and I would have a really good time with myself. And fortunately, I came from a religious background where teenagers were actually encouraged to masturbate because it prevented them from having sex. And it was like we had a lecture at church that, before you go have sex with someone before you're ready, you could always masturbate, which was quite remarkable. That came from an infamous person at the time named Dr. James Dobson, who was part of a group in Colorado called Focus on the Family. But of all things, he actually encouraged teenagers to masturbate because it would keep them from having sex with each other. So that, among the fact that I had really relatively sex-positive parents who never would have endorsed homosexuality, but really taught me that sex is good, and sex is good for you, and sex is healthy. So those factors led them to put a lock on my door, and I had privacy, and I made really great use of it until the time I left home, and then into my college years. And I discovered that I was doing things with my body that nobody taught me. I didn't know until I was well into my late teens that most guys jack off with their hand. My favorite way had been to writhe and squirm naked all over my bed and release lots of cum all over the sheets. And I discovered creative ways to reach near orgasm and flip over on my back and come without touching myself. And I used a lot of circular pelvic movements because it felt good to writhe and gyrate my body. And it wasn't till I was a full-fledged adult, probably in my 20s, that I realized most people, other guys, weren't doing this, and nobody had taught me how. So it was almost as if I had some kind of tantric angelic guide. But in less esoteric terms, I really think everybody has that guide within them, and somehow in between bouts of studying for 8 or 10 hours at the library on Saturday, I still managed to have a lot of fun with my body and let my body show me the way. So, and I believe your question was like, how did I get around the shame? The short story is, by the time I finally decided I was ready to have sex with another guy, I did it when I was fully ready. Like, I was so beyond ready, I was ready to just go bust a nut. I mean, I really knew that I was ready to enjoy some really good sex, and I had made a clear decision that it was time and that I was going to absolutely 100% thoroughly enjoy the fuck out of myself without question. So by the time I finally got with another guy, there wasn't a question in my mind about what I was doing, whether it was right or wrong. It was just what I had been waiting for. And I thoroughly indulged. And thoroughly indulged meant doing a lot with guys that I had been doing by myself for 9 years. A lot of it was face-to-face. A lot of it involved sliding around on one another's bodies, reaching heightened states of sexual ecstasy and ejaculating and then doing it again. The second guy I was ever with, we had 4 ejaculations, and it was late in the night, and we were in his shower, and he said, "Brad, have you ever fucked a guy?" And I said, "What have we been doing for the last 5 hours?" To me, we had been fucking with our entire bodies nonstop. It was the most euphoric experience of my life. It never even occurred to me that someone might think that sticking it in might make it better. I do enjoy anal sex, and it was some years, maybe a year later, before I had my first experience. And it was wonderful, and yet it never compared with the ecstasy I had found even before I met anyone. I had already found that the source of erotic ecstasy did not depend on the partner I was with, because I had learned to be my own most ecstatic sex partner. And I noticed that the men I started having sex with tend to be on the same wavelength. Like, they were men that were ready to have a really fucking good time, and it wasn't completely dependent on me. And my satisfaction certainly wasn't dependent on them.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, I so resonate with so much of that. And, you know, I similarly, I started masturbating when I was 8 years old. And the first time I ever had a sexual experience with someone else, I was 25. So it was a considerable stretch of enjoying myself. But part of it for me was sex by myself always was fulfilling. It still is. It's a really joyful, beautiful, sacred, ecstatic experience. And I similarly, too, have never I understand, but feel flummoxed by how in the gay world, penetrative anal sex is considered fucking, but being intimate in other ways often isn't. Like, why are we trapped in this heteronormative paradigm of assertive sex? Like, why are you not appreciating the fact that you can have amazing sex with somebody and never once put your penis in their butt?
Well, I have a good explanation why. I'm sure there are many reasons, but one of the main reasons is because we learned how to have sex by watching porn. And porn is exciting. It feels really good to get so excited and just bust a nut. I just love ejaculating, but many of us learn, especially as we get older, that there has to be a lot more to sex because there are only so many times a day or week you can ejaculate without exhausting yourself. And those erotic videos are not depicting the kind of sex that I've been enjoying my whole life. I haven't seen it until somebody asked me to start helping create erotic videos. So I actually have been coaching erotic video models on film sets. And that's not to say that every erotic video model needs coaching. I mean, there's a lot of fucking great sex happening in porn, and it really gets my rocks off. And there's a lot that's not happening in porn. And until somebody suggests another way, then the production line just keeps producing video after video after video that sells. And what sells is the same thing that we saw before with a different face, a different body, fresh meat.
Yeah.
So I just about finished editing part 1 of a sexual session I enjoyed with a lover in Provincetown in April. April 9th, we had sex and we had cameras set up everywhere. And I've been working on editing it myself for 3 months because I knew what happened there inside of my body, but I didn't know if the story could be told that would tell the story of what actually happened, because the external view is only half of the picture. There's a lot happening inside. Maybe the external view is only 10%. And I've been wanting to find a way to convey this with special effects and sound and light and music. So I just finished editing a 37-minute sex scene that's really part of a 2-hour-long sex scene, but I condensed the first part of it into 37 minutes, and I finished it. I don't know how much cum I spewed just trying to edit it because it was so exciting and so much fun to watch. That's one reason it took 3 months. And now that I'm almost done, I'm looking at it and I realize, wait, there's no cum shot in this video. I mean, a logical guess would be, oh, that's because it's part of a series and you still have part 2 and part 3. But no, actually, I have to say, I had sex with this person 2 hours. Nobody ejaculated. And I want to see the day when somebody watches this video and they get so excited about it that they don't even realize there's no cum shot. Because, and until somebody sees that possibility, how do you ever explain it to someone? They would be like, well, what did you do? What do you mean? I mean, what did you actually do if nobody ejaculated? What were you doing? Well, we were doing something, and it took 3 months to edit it, and it's 37 minutes long. I was cutting backflips on the other side of the galaxy. That's what I described my first sexual experience as being like. It was like I was cutting backflips on the other side of the galaxy, and then all of a sudden the guy's like shaking me, saying, hey, hello, dude. Hello, I have neighbors. Can you just tone it down a little bit? You know?
That's why I live on 3 acres, so you don't have to worry about that.
Well, I live in a house in an urban area surrounded by no less than 10 houses, and there's been a lot of noise here in 10 years, especially in summer when the windows are up. Nobody has air conditioning. It's a nice climate here in Asheville, North Carolina, and I haven't had any complaints. And you know why? Because when I moved in the house, I made a declaration. I said, any noise that comes out of this house has to be resonant with the surroundings, like it has to meet the surroundings. Like I'm only going to make noises that would bring benefit to me and benefit to the people I'm with and benefit to other people. Now someone would say, well, how do you do that? Or, how do you bring that down to reality? But the reality is, there's a relationship between me and the environment I'm in. And, I only engage in activities that I'm 100% sure in my heart and in my core are going to bring benefit to me, benefit to the people I'm with, benefit to the people around me, benefit to the neighborhood and the world, which is why I hosted a sex party here once, and there were 40 people of all genders getting off. 40 people. People were like, wow, I want to go. Like, when's that happening again? And I don't know, but I tell you, it is happening internationally, and it's not an isolated case. But what made this party unique, I think, was it was springtime, and it was hot. It was already really hot, and all the windows were up. And I've noticed men don't make a lot of noise generally, sexually, especially in more heteronormative settings. I think I was the only queer person at that party, or one of 2 or 3, and the men were quite silent and the women were overtly expressive, which says a lot, because I don't think women are often gifted a place where they can really let loose, because I think when women let loose, there's an unstoppable orgasm that emerges. It's not like an event, like with men, like you're like, I'm coming. I came. Like if a woman really reaches a state of freedom where she feels safe and she can scream like nobody's watching or listening, it can last a long time and it can be really loud. Now, imagine that times 10. It happened in this house. I have a downstairs neighbor who happens to be the landlord, and I didn't realize he was home. I thought he was gone that night, and the next day I saw him outside. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about all the noise last night. We were up really late. And he said, didn't hear a thing. And the next time I saw him, he said, I've been meaning to tell you, I don't know what you're doing up there, upstairs, but I think it's just really good for the house. Really good for the neighborhood. I was like, well, thank you. How did that happen? Well, I told everybody at the beginning of the party, I have neighbors, the windows are up. If you find yourself facing a window and you're going to have a screaming orgasm, just be sure to hold all those people in your heart and make a sound that you feel resonates with the area. And apparently they did it really well. Some people didn't even hear it. Yeah. I like to tell stories anyway. I don't know what your question was, but that was a story about the unstoppable orgasm. And I've been teaching men to have that unstoppable orgasm, because it's actually not limited to women. It's not limited to your cock, and it really comes from deep in your core, like really deep in your core. I call it the man womb.
I love that.
It's kin to laughter. It's kin to laughter that you can't control. You can't control the divine feminine. And men who say they don't have a feminine are really out to lunch. And it's really because they just haven't had a chance to explore the possibility that the same thing that makes you laugh until you can't stop, the same thing that makes you surge with creativity and create beautiful artwork, is your divine feminine. And it surges when you feel safe and when you have enough space to really let loose and be held at the same time. And that's what I do for other men.
I love all that. I love that. And also, I'll just throw out there, if anyone wants to experience that in person, I know you have a retreat coming up Labor Day weekend that you're co-hosting with Patrick Emanuel. So it might be a really great opportunity to come and explore that firsthand.
Yeah, let me just say a couple words about that. Thanks for saying that. I haven't facilitated any events on any independent events on my own or with colleagues for several years, mainly due to COVID. So Patrick Emanuel from Germany and I created this event where we're going to explore transformational sexuality, tantra, erotic shamanism, and sexual magic in a beautiful wild place. It's a camping event. Not too intense, like you don't have to hike 10 kilometers to get to it with a backpack. You just unload from your car and walk a short distance, but it's a very private area in a national forest and no facilities. And we're providing bedding and comfortable padding and tents for people who need it, or you can bring your own. So anyway, that's September 2nd to 5th, 2022 in Western North Carolina. And you can find out more at freeguys.net. Is that what his website is? Freeguys.net, right?
Guys with a Z.
Yeah. Or I'll be posting more on my website, bradamberhart.com. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. It's not the first event I've done in the last 3 years. I did some last spring in affiliation with Tantra for Gay Men. I'm just saying this is the first event I've organized locally in my area in the North Carolina mountains in 3 years. But I do also lead weekends for Tantra for Gay Men, an international organization, and there'll be some more of those coming up in November. And that's exciting to explore Tantra for 2 full days in an urban setting with a group of men.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. I so also just want to thank you, too, for bringing up this idea of how amazing sex can be when you're not focused on reaching the point of ejaculation. Like, a lot of people ask me and my husband, because we both identify much more as tops, like, well, how does that work? And I'm like, well, for us, sex is not necessarily about rushing to coming. Like, for us, sex is about the connection and the energy we're building and what we're experiencing together. And there's many times where we'll conclude our lovemaking after however long we've been at and just say, I'm satisfied. Like, I feel good. I don't need to ejaculate right now. And I don't feel like I've missed out. And so I just think it's interesting, the preoccupation that gay men have of, like, to rush to that point as if that's a symbol of completion, when you can experience a really deep sense of completion and ecstasy before reaching that point. And as you mentioned, as we get older too, how our consciously choosing when we ejaculate becomes more and more beneficial, because our bodies just don't recharge as quickly as we did when we were 16 years old.
Yeah, you really said a lot there, because what is completion? If we don't ejaculate, then what completes the encounter? It's a question I've been exploring for a while, and I kind of view it like a flight taking off and landing. Mm-hmm. The start of the encounter, you're taking off, and then you're landing, and then you acknowledge we're complete, and you go on with the next thing. There's just this built-in unconscious, I think there's this unconscious built-in mechanism that says that completion means you have to ejaculate. That's why I encourage people to, once in a while, maybe not every time you have sex, but once in a while experiment with going through a whole sexual session without ejaculation, and make an agreement with your partner. Let's just try this once. It doesn't, again, I'm not talking about doing this all the time. There's nothing absolute. Just what would happen just once if we said to our lover, I would really love to just fuck the living daylights out of you, and take turns enjoying one another's bodies, and see what happens if we go through the whole 2 hours without ejaculating. So for a lot of us, that's just a theory, because it's hard to imagine, well, what would we be doing for 2 hours? But I can say from a lot of wonderful experiences that it's like riding waves, and sometimes you're asleep And then you come out of the sleep and you're wildly ecstatic. And the waves go up and down, and then the final wave comes to a lull, and you're in this beautiful, gentle, open-hearted space. I get a lot of my inspiration that way. I do some of my best writing when I come out of lovemaking sessions like that. It's a wonderful place to bask in. It's a great way to let go of agendas. It's a good idea to set aside a whole part of a day, like even when you're finished with the lovemaking session, to not have anything scheduled afterwards. I deliberately leave that time to just sit down and write or meditate or lie in the sun. Yeah.
I love that. It seems like you have a lot of connection also with simpleness and stillness in life, of taking that time to just be present, to just be still, to be connected with nature, to be connected with the flow of our bodies, the flow of time, the flow of days, and be really rooted into place in a way that I think a lot of people aren't as we get to screens and technology and social pressures.
Well, I really appreciate that acknowledgement, and it might help you and many other people to know that it's kind of an on-off situation for me sometimes. As much as I feel deeply connected after ecstatic sex or after being in the wilderness for 3 or 4 days, it doesn't ever seem easy to come back to all of the stuff that we feel we need to do every day. All the electronic interface, all of the noise, all of the activity, all of the movement. And ideally the purpose of a meditation practice or a tantric practice is to somehow bring more of what we find in the bedroom into our daily lives. So that continues to be the main challenge for me personally is, you can go into these states of bliss, you can go on a blissful retreat, and then when you face your life afterwards, you're not going to be the same person. You're never going to be the same person after these transformational experiences. And the external environment has to shift to accommodate the new me, the new us. And we can work really hard to try to change the world around us. Or we can start to notice what's showing up to match the new vibration. It means that we're going to need to let go of some stuff that we thought that we just had to have, whatever our job looked like, our relationships, those things that I don't know. Do I need to quit drinking coffee? I get up every morning. I love coffee. Sometimes I go through a transformational experience and my body goes, we don't really want coffee anymore. And we got to make room. We got to make room for the new beauty that we've invited in through these transformational experiences. Otherwise, we can't just snap back into the way we were. Once we've been stretched into this new shape, we're not going to return to our original shape. And that's the hardest part of Tantra for me, is that it demands that we be attentive to the transformation taking place and do everything that we can to show up for the new us. Because we're not the same anymore. The world isn't the same. And if the world's going to change, it starts inside of his body.
Amen. Amen. I want to ask you about group sexual experiences and the role that plays in mental health, wellness, being a well-integrated member in society, because something I've noticed in my own life, in my own practice, as much as I love having one-on-one sex with my husband and enjoy the intimacy that we have together, the moments where I've entered a group sexual setting where I may or may not be partaking, but to be in that environment and to see other men fully exposed and fully enjoying themselves and in their bodies, and to see each other and to acknowledge each other. Like, for me, it's very much brought up this feeling of what we're lacking in society, which is true brotherhood, true connection, true intimacy, and how joyful it is to get to be in a sacred, intimate space with other men. In your point of view, what role does it have to play for us, for our well-being, for our own spiritual evolution? Like, is it something that we should be experiencing?
It's something we need as much of as possible. And when I hear the beautiful, beautiful expression from UK of what group sexual fun means to you, my first question is, where's it happening? Where did you find it? Because my perception is it's way too rare. Way too rare. And on the rare occasions that I've experienced total let go sexually in a group of men, I had the sensation of my mind not being able to keep up. It was like a sensation of being swept away by a ridiculously marvelous warm current that I just wanted to ride and ride and ride. Something magical happens when there are hands and body parts and cocks and mouths all over, and you no longer can assign them to a particular person or an ego. And the experience I'm describing, unfortunately, is one that many people who might be listening to this, who may have bothered to listen this long without thinking I'm crazy or something, the people that are still listening, they're going, well, it must be nice. I've never in my fucking life had sex with more than one person at a time. And there would be a lot of people that would say, I haven't had sex in a year or two. There's a man coming to see me next week who hasn't had sex but once with another man in 30 years. So here we are talking about group erotic activity among a group of men. For most people, it's a fantasy. Other people can relate to it because we may have been to a bathhouse, or if we're lucky, we may have been to a sex party. Maybe once or twice we experienced something that was just over the fucking top and magnificent. And yet, I would say most people would agree with me it's quite rare. And when it does happen, and when you're flying through the stars like that, I think it's short-lived. So what we need are more spaces where that can happen. And the key is, how does anyone ever create a space for men to get together and have an ecstatic group experience? How does anyone create that? What does it take? Because it's such unfamiliar terrain, there needs to be a guide. I think there needs to be a guide to open the portal for men to step in and go into a place where they can feel fucking safe and let go, and especially where they feel the way that they look, how old they are, how large they are, how small they are, what color their skin is, doesn't make a fucking difference to anybody. And who's going to create that space? I mean, who's going to create a space where men of all shapes, sizes, colors, ages can step in, let go, and feel held and lose their fucking selves? You know, it's like, I create it. But what might really, really surprise people is accessing that state of ecstasy in a group requires letting go of a lot of assumptions. Like, I have a friend here in Asheville who's been facilitating events that involve basically covering a large area of a room with a slip and slide surface, kind of like a gigantic kiddie pool that has sides, and it's like a slick mat, and he gets everyone covered in J-Lube, which is like a really slick substance, and people slide around on each other's bodies. Now, I have not been. I don't know where I was when it happened, but I missed it, and he hasn't done it in a while. But when I host another Tantra weekend here in the place that I live, we're going to have that event. So why am I bringing it up? Because everybody I know that went there said something happened to them that they can't explain. And I'll say, were people having sex? And they went, I don't think so. And then I'll say, well, what were they doing? And they'll say, I can't explain it, except it was the most erotic sensation I've ever had in my life. And there were naked bodies sliding around all over each other. And I couldn't tell who was who or what body part was what. And I'm like, were people erect? And they would say, I don't know. And they'll say, I think we were blindfolded. So then, if that person was having a transcendental erotic or even sexual experience in contact with other people's bodies, and they don't even know if anybody was hard, they don't know if anybody was fucking, they don't think there was any anal sex, I'm like, okay, there's hope for the world. Because the state of ecstasy we're seeking, the state of ecstasy we're trying to get to, it doesn't come from trying, it comes from letting go. And it's really ultimately about finding that place in ourselves that wants to just fucking get lost and know that we're held and we're safe at the same time. I teach people to make sound. A lot of people don't realize how excited and how euphoric and orgasmic they can become just by freeing their voice. And most people have never found a place they didn't feel ashamed of their own sex sounds, you know. Mm-hmm. So
love that. And
group sex. Thanks.
I think that's also just a really great. Oh yeah, sure. Thank you for talking about it. I think that's also really a great just spiritual truth in general, is that we strive so hard to achieve something. And I know in my own life, the greatest spiritual advancements have come by letting go and releasing into it rather than trying to make something happen. So I love you bringing that up.
Well, might I add that we don't have to try so hard if we can already see and feel the state that we're aiming for. And if we're able to envision, see, or feel the possibility of what it would be like to be engaging in ecstatic sexual pleasure, we don't have to try to make it happen. But I feel like talking about it in this way isn't making a lot of sense, unfortunately. But basically what I'm talking about is the same thing you are, that it doesn't always require trying, but sometimes it really, really helps to have a clear vision. And vision not only comes in your eyesight or in your mind, it comes in your body. Like I can feel with my whole body the kind of lovership that I want to enjoy. I can already feel how it feels to engage that lover with my whole heart and body and soul. And, you know, even if I'm looking to attract a certain type of lover or a long-term lover, I hold that vision whenever I make love with anyone. Sometimes I tell my lovers and I tell each other we're ready to work together to manifest lovers. It's not like we see each other as the end-all sex partner. Yeah. We're actually holding the vision for one another about the lovers that we want to attract. That's hard to understand in a monogamous world where we're trained that we're supposed to find the one.
Yeah. I love how you put that too. It's, you know, my husband and I explored opening up our relationship about 1.5 years ago after being monogamous for several years. And we found a lot of frustration in trying to have one-on-one or foursomes with other people, just because so often guys are not approaching sex from that vantage, that they're not approaching it as a healing, spiritual, intimate experience, which ultimately is the only sex that really interests me. I'm not interested in just friction. I often say I could do a better job on my own, thank you, than most other people can do for me. And so I so appreciate and so love you, the intention that you set for yourself and your partners, and the integrity and the heart and the openness that you bring. Because I feel like we'd all be a lot happier and healthier if we were open to that. We'd all be a lot happier and healthier if we were open to, you know, group sexual settings that were coming from a place of love and connection and intimacy. And so thank you for that.
Do I have space to just say one more thing that'll take like 1.5 minutes?
By all means, time is yours.
There seems to be a separation between what we perceive to be intimacy and connection and what we perceive to be super hot primal sex. Like, it seems like there's a perception that either you have like deep, heartfelt, intimate lovership with someone that might be like your boyfriend or partner, or you just have downright hot, nasty fucking sex with a guy that you just met on Grindr, right? It's kind of like, I mean, I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but I think a lot of people could agree with me that in general we separate intimacy and connection from sex. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's either just sex or it's like the real thing with somebody that we love. So one thing I would really love to use this opportunity for is to say, how much it could mean if every fuck buddy or every person that we hooked up with online could also be treated like a lover. Or what would it be like if what we consider taboo, raunchy, or downright dirty and nasty were also, could we combine that with a level of passion and love for this person? Um, like, I'm about to release a video where, in between, like, saying dirty words in somebody's ear, I'm also whispering, I love you. And that just is a classic example of how you can do what really turns you the fuck on and you can really love someone even if you just met them. I frequently tell people in bathhouses or public sex environments that I really love and appreciate them. And sometimes they think that we should leave and we should go home together. And I tell them, well, I'm really happy with you right here now in this sling, and I feel really at home with you. And that feels like enough. And I'd like to share that with other people around us. You know, it's kind of like when it moves from like raw primal fuck me in a sling to I love you, like that we can't have this in the bathhouse. You know, we've got to go somewhere else because this is something better now, better than the bathhouse because you said you loved me.
Yeah.
And I say, what, I can love you and I can be a dirty fucker. Isn't that what you want? To be fucked in a sling in a bathhouse? Or do you think that we should put the sling away and go get a U-Haul and get all my stuff and move? You know, it's like
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, one of the most spiritual experiences of my life happened in a bathhouse. It's like, those things are not separate. I love that.
I wish I could hear about it. I would like to hear about one of the most heightened spiritual experiences of your
Yeah,
life in a
it
bathhouse.
was it was the week after my wedding. I was in Paris for work, and I wanted to go explore some local gay culture. So, with my husband's permission, I went to this huge one of Europe's largest bathhouses in Paris called Sun City, which was fun because it had lots of like Shivas and Ganeshas and Indian statues all over, which was made me feel at home. Um, and I just had this absolutely transcendent experience of interpersonal connection, of the sacredness of sex and sexuality, watching men be so intimate and sensual and free of shame, and seeing the beauty and the sacredness. It was a transformative and gorgeous moment for me in my life and my journey, and just a tremendous sense of coming home, a sense of this is what I want in my life, this is where I belong. And if I lived in this city, I'd be here 6 days a week. Like it's amazing, that feeling of community. And while I was there, I had really interesting conversations with people, felt like I made genuine connections, and was very turned on. But the same thing too is just approaching every person that you meet, to use your term sacred intimate, approach everyone you meet as somebody who you love, who is an aspect of God, who is perfect in and of themselves. And your interaction might not be anything more than just making eye contact, but to truly allow yourself to be seen and to see someone else, to be held, to be known. Like, I think that's part of our purpose as human beings. That's part of our joy as human beings. And then we go back to our separate homes, our separate lives, our disconnection, and it feels like a shadow of the life that we had previously experienced, where we were actually connected with others.
what will it look like when there's no going back is the main question. Like,
Mm. Well,
we're
I think
often
you're
going on these retreats, we're having these experiences, then we go back to our lives. That doesn't seem to make any sense.
no, and for me personally and my husband, one of our goals is to eventually create and move into a retreat center, to create a space where that's where we live. Um, and moving towards that goal, that's part of the reason I have this channel, is to start to build that community, to find those like souls who feel connected in that way. But I personally believe that the way that we have set up society in the Western world and contemporary life is fundamentally disconnected from what we need for good emotional, mental, physical health, which is regular, meaningful connection with people that we love, feeling a part of a community, being connected to something bigger than yourself, being connected with nature, um, experiencing regular feelings of intimacy, whether that's sexual or non-sexual, it doesn't matter. Um, but that's not how our current contemporary society has structured itself, and I think we're all suffering because of it. And something fun I'll share with you too is there's not been terribly many moments in my life where I've had a voice speak to me, where just going down the street and, oh, a voice, hello. But when I was 24 years old, and still a virgin, I had a friend invite me to a Neo Tantra massage workshop in Chicago at Tantra Nova. And I was so nervous because I hadn't even made out with anybody at this point in my life. But as I was walking up the stairs to go into the event, I heard a voice say to me, "This is part of the work you're meant to be doing." And it freaked me out because I was like, hell no, absolutely not. But as I've continued to learn and grow and evolve into myself, and just seeing how important bringing your whole self, how important intimacy is on a physical level, a mental level, a spiritual level, an emotional level, everything. That for me, it's become indivisible from the work. And so something to try and continue to move and grow towards. How do we create more of those spaces? How do we create more opportunity for that? As you said a few minutes ago, unfortunately, so many of those, group sexual settings are so rare and so hard to come by. I was fortunate to get to be a part of one maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and it was such a fulfilling experience. And I wish that were weekly. I wish that were, 3 times a week. I wish it were regular. I crave that. And so how do we create those spaces?
It seems reasonable that if we can create them, then we can give other people basic tools to create them as well. It's one of my dreams to watch these things popping up everywhere and that I get to go to them without facilitating,
Yeah.
I do my best to pass on the tools that I have to other people, and I want to attend their events. I want to walk into a place with someone else facilitating and just have delicious sex in a group of men for hours. I would love that.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd like it to be available regularly. And it's baffling. Why isn't it? I think it's because we really, as a culture, don't have the tools yet to create a place where people can step in of all shapes, sizes, colors, ages, persuasions, and feel at ease enough to really let go and ride the wave of ecstasy.
Yeah.
Without drugs.
Without drugs. And I think one of my earlier questions too circles around to this is, and how do we get over the shame? Because we live in a society that says you're only allowed to partake if you look a certain way, if you have a certain type of body, if you're a certain age, if you're a certain skin color, if you have a certain sized endowment. And if you don't fit within those boxes, then you're told you're not supposed to be sexual. And even if you do fit in with those boxes, the amount of pressure you have of, something I say is like, when I was working as an actor, I knew plenty of fitness models who would be afraid to leave the house for a week if they went out and had a pizza one night because they felt so gross and disgusting and didn't want anyone to see them. we carry so much shame in our society about our longings, about our bodies, about our desires, and needing to process that.
It seems like an easy solution is the more people who have an opportunity to enter a conscious group sex space, the more opportunities we'll all have to get over that. The only way to get over the shame is to get over it. And the only way to get over it is to have an opportunity to step into a space where it feels different. I think once people have been in a space where they see large men, small men, tall men, short men, men of different races, ages, once people have been in that space and they see that it's possible, then there's a template. Yeah. So, I'm really grateful for the work I do with Tantra for Gay Men, for, even though the things I host with them they're not orgies, they're workshops. And yet for a lot of men who come there, it's the first time they've ever been in a group of men where they feel comfortable and at ease, whether they're old, whether they're young, whether they think that they're beautiful, whether they think that nobody notices them. For all those men to be in a room and be erotically charged, writhing and squirming on one another's bodies and raising heightened levels of orgasmic energy together, it just completely demolishes the idea that it even matters what someone looks like. And you have to be in a space like that before you ever know what it means. I found that through Body Electric 20-something years ago. And now I teach workshops in a similar way through Tantra for Gay Men. I'm really, really excited about those. I think we need a portal. We can't always just find ourselves dropping into a fantastic orgy until we actually learn that the pleasure and the joy and the ecstasy we're seeking can come even before the hard dick and the penetration and the certain type of body that we think it takes.
Yeah. And taking that even one step further too, as we look at our regular sexual partners, or your primary partner, your husband, or whatever, is acknowledging that one of the gifts of aging is the ability to let go of the physical and start to connect with something deeper, and that you can find something attractive in pretty much anybody. And often the most attractive elements of a person aren't what their body looks like, but, as I often like to say, how close does their spirit sit to their skin? And those people who you truly see the person within, you truly see their inner light shining out, are absolutely captivating. Brad, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. It is such a joy to get to connect with you. I'd love to have another conversation with you at some point if you're open and willing. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on, talk about, promote at all while we have this time together today?
I just would like to say that those beautiful ecstatic souls of which you're speaking, who are so much more than a body, they can also be a lot of fun in bed. Some of my most ecstatic sex partners have been men that were twice my age, like in their 80s, men that weighed hundreds of pounds. And this is really hard to explain, but the reality is the journey of sexual pleasure takes me to a higher place. And when you're with a partner who's willing and excited about journeying to a higher place, seeing a new vista, it won't matter as much what their body type is. It just won't matter anymore. And I feel that's really my main life's mission, to help more people see that.
Beautiful.
So I've been filming more sexual sessions with a diversity of men, and I've been releasing some of them on my website, just a few so far, at bradamberhart.com. There's a whole section of videos. Some of them are highly professionally made with Hemorrhoes TV, and some of them are just made with men who set up a camera and go at it. And I'm also going to be starting an OnlyFans channel. You'll be able to find me there. It's going to be at Brad Amberhart, and that's coming up soon. I'm just building up content, so just have luscious things to share with the world. Yeah, just check out my website, join my mailing list, and I'll be announcing opportunities to gather in groups this November and a really facilitated Tantra workshop, 3 different weekends all around the USA. I'll be facilitating for Tantra for Gay Men this November. So just sign up for my mailing list and I'll be informing you of where we can get together and the new videos that I'm really, really excited about. I'm also going to be writing more stories that are really explicit about what happens in these evolutionary sessions, because some of it cannot be transferred on film, and I've been writing it for 20 years. And I'm going to be releasing collections of stories in the coming months and year. So all of that will be posted at bradamberhart.com.
Beautiful. And
I'm excited for more conversations like this.
And the links are below, so feel free to open up the description and click on the links there. Brad, thank you so much, my brother. So much love and blessings for you. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity to connect.
Thank you.